Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to That's So Craven, your one-stop shop for everything Fulham. I am Mike of Fulham, Boston, and with me, unfortunately, I cannot call him Mike as well because at least in the US, Mike and Mike in the morning is a trademark thing. And in fact, I'm not even sure I'm supposed to call him Traveler because we do have the legend Alex Ferguson, the Traveler, who is another great Fulham supporter that we want to honor. But I guess for his namesake, Michael, you're joining me today. How are we doing? It's just the two of us. We kicked Dave out.
Yeah, we've kicked Flaky Dave out because he and Skibby both failed a late fitness test. So yeah, you might have seen previously advertised that they would be joining the podcast, but yeah, needless to say, they're not here. But that's all right. We've got Mike and Mikey not in the morning, thankfully, but yeah, we're doing good. Obviously, a great win last night. So what could possibly be wrong?
What a match. And Mike, I got to start you off on this one. What were your thoughts going into the match? Because we started off and you looked at the lineup, there was one change, Chukwueze came in. How were you feeling going into this? Were we thinking that we were going to be, more of our own, for better or worse phrasing, Fulhamish selves, or was it going to be Spursiness that wins out?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a few days ago in the preview pod, and none of us were too particularly optimistic about getting a win. I think you and I both went for a score draw, which I thought was probably our best bet. The game itself kind of presented itself as the ultimate sort of acca buster. Whatever you went for was going to be the wrong result because our away form terrible, Spurs home form not particularly great. So wasn't one of those ones that you could easily predict. I was pleased when I saw the lineup. I think it was the kind of, Chukwueze for Kevin was certainly the only change that I expected and wanted to see. So that was pleasing. And I think it was uh, a just reward for the cameos that we've seen from Chukwueze previously. But other than that, I was quite sort of happy with our lineup. And as well, when you look at the Spurs team, and I was talking with my dad about this more on the way home, it was you look at them and they've got a few individuals that you like and think they could be dangerous, but they don't feel like much of a team where you couldn't really tell who they're sort of, you know, who are their kind of key players? What's the sort of undroppable players that they've got? And I looked at that lineup and kind of thought, actually, them starting with Gray and Bergvall in midfield gives us a bit of a chance to win that battle because even though they've got lots of energy and mobility, they aren't the most sort of creative playmaker types, and we know Polina's not the same. So I was kind of encouraged as much by what I saw from Silver picking as from what Thomas Frank selected.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you had to pick the Spurs kind of key man, this is weird to say for a Spurs team that at least in recent time their star players have been the likes of Harry Kane, of Heung-min Son, players like that. Saying Mickey Van de Ven is probably their most important key player, and I believe leading goal scorer is a really strange thing to say. And so, yeah, I agree. When I looked at the lineup, I was pretty excited. Yes, we all know what Kudus does, and he punished us. We'll come back to that later on a wonderful goal. But uh, look, I was the person saying that I'm not sure Chukwueze should start. He has injury concerns, fitness concerns. God, watching us play with him, we are a different team. Candidly, he's got all the pace of the players that we've been looking for, whether it's all what we've hoped in Adama to be for so long, and he does have that trickiness of someone like Kevin who can kind of break through and make something happen out of nothing, and he doesn't go down. I thought he was phenomenal, and from the outset, candidly, I mean, we scored two goals in the first 5 minutes. He's the one who actually sets up the first goal. And it's his run, it's his play. Yes, it's a pretty simple assist, but Kenny Tete puts a foot through it. We saw the powers that he has a few weeks ago when he had one of our best shots in the match. I'm trying to remember who that was. It was the match before
It was
Everton, I'm pretty sure.
Wolves.
It
Yeah,
was
it was Wolves.
Wolves, you're
Yeah.
right. And hits it again. He's really, really on this time, and it's pretty wild. So I got to say the impact of Chukwueze was really nice to see. And Mike, I want to hear more about your thoughts, how we felt 3 minutes in. I will say I want to give us each kind of a 33% credit on our predictions. Because if I remember correctly, you said it was going to be a 1-1 draw. I said it was going to be a 2-2 draw. Ends up being a 2-1 win for Fulham. I think I get the 2, you get the 1, and neither of us gets the draw. I think that's about a 33% hit rate. I'm going to give us the credit.
I'll take that. Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, we made a great start. So I felt when we were talking on Thursday that we were going to have to weather an early storm, but actually it was us that started on the front foot, and we got our reward really early, which was great. I think there's two elements of luck in it. That Chukwueze's pass, he almost kind of wrong foots Bergval unintentionally because he was probably trying to cut it back, but actually ends up sort of playing it in between Bergval and the defense, which is what finds its, what makes the ball find its way to Kenny Tete. And then obviously there's a deflection off Udogi, which wrong foots the goalkeeper entirely. But as you say, it's nice to see players arriving on the edge of the box in a position to shoot and then actually taking that on. We've been guilty way too often of playing that extra pass, which maybe isn't necessary. I'm always an advocate of get your shots off when you can, because a deflection can go in your favor. And if you don't take that opportunity, then you'll never know. So brilliant start to the game, and obviously quite unexpected. I think there was quite a few people in the away end who probably weren't quite in position yet. They probably just sort of late stragglers had arrived to find us 1-0 up. And also we were quite shocked by who the goal scorer was, because Kenny Tete is not exactly our most prolific, but brilliant to see him on the score sheet. We all love Tete, usually for what he does in the other end of the pitch. But yeah, really pleased for him, and just, phenomenal start. So yeah, it was quite impressive how we took the game to Spurs and got that early reward.
Mike, I have a confession for you. At the end of the day, I was driving in. I was in DC this week with the Fulham DC quotes. I see Grange Sideburns chiming in the chat right now, and I really appreciate the commentary. I have a fun story about us in a minute. But I will say I was parking. I was trying to avoid the DC police, and I parallel parked into my spot, paid the mirror, and all of a sudden from the bar, doors open. I just hear screaming 3-4 minutes in, and I see the goal score, and I sprint before my transaction's even finished to go in and see the replay. It's so great, as you said, to see a shot get hit, and we're going to talk about this and continuously when we talk about the first half. And actually, it's a great segue into the second goal, where it's great pressure, great presence of mind from Josh to play Wilson. Wilson calls for the ball where he wants it and hits a strike that all I can say is, who put the ball in the Spurs net?
Same guy that put the ball in the Brentford net and the Chelsea net. Not sure if we're allowed to swear, but it's Harry fucking Wilson.
Exactly. It's Harry fucking Wilson. Sorry to the editors who have to put an expletive on this one, but it is worth it for this one. Yeah, I mean, what a strike there. And look, I know there's been a lot of talk about things like Raul's contributions and his ability to play a full 90, especially if he's injured, especially when he's 34, especially when he's playing the full run out for Mexico. The pressure he puts on is incredible. And again, you talk about the little passes that make a difference. Josh gets a goal contribution. We wanted to see Josh King on the score sheet. We didn't get the goal, and we'll come back onto this in a second. But we got an assist out of Josh King, and what a strike by Harry Wilson. I got to ask, what is Vicario doing? Put it out, put it long. I don't care. It kind of just looked like he was scared. Mike, I don't know about you. When I list off the 5 most intimidating Fulham players, Raul Jimenez, not quite up there.
No, he's not, but it's his pressure that puts Vicario in that situation. I mean, fans of football generally will have seen quite a lot of, long distance goals recently from just catching out goalkeepers unaware. I think that there seems to be this overriding prevalence in football is in terms of, rather than a goalkeeper now just clearing their lines, they all want to prove how much of a footballer they are, or how much of a sweeper they are. I think, we saw Manuel Neuer in no man's land on Wednesday against Arsenal. We've seen other ones that have just got away with it. I hate goalkeepers that come charging out into areas that they just don't belong. But obviously for us on Saturday, it was absolutely perfect. And what I didn't appreciate at the time, which I've only since seen when watching the highlights back, was that Harry Wilson's pretty much right on the touchline. I thought he was more infield when he, took the strike on. So he's got the perfect amount of whip and pace on it to direct it towards the goal. And what was brilliant as well was that very rarely when you're in a stadium do you know that it's going to be a goal before it's actually hit the net. But Cesc gave us a lovely little spoiler, because before the ball had even gone in, you could see Cesc running away with his arms in the air. So it's brilliant to be able to start celebrating a goal before it's even hit the back of the net. But hell of a strike from Wilson. Great awareness from both him and King. Really, intelligent play, and just put us absolutely in dreamland, really. I don't think anybody would expect for us to be 2-0 up away from home, let alone against, somebody the caliber of Tottenham.
And let alone what, 10 minutes into the match. I mean, it was really, really incredible. I have a fun fact for you, actually. So the Harry's goal today, yesterday, was the second longest goal in terms of distance scored of any Premier League goal this season. Do you know who was the first?
I'm guessing it was Tyler Adams from
That is
Saturday.
correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So both of the two longest goals of the season in the Premier League happened this weekend.
Brilliant, yeah. And to be fair, both brilliant strikes, but kind of different in their execution. But just fantastic to see just players, certainly in a Fulham shirt, making the most of an opportunity that's presented to them, we've been a bit guilty of being a bit wasteful with our chances in previous games. So it was really nice to see us, hit the front early with a couple of brilliantly taken goals.
Yeah, and I want to come on to that with the rest of this first half, because I don't know about you. In my mind, it should have been four. And I think of the breakaway from Josh, who had a great run through and then inexplicably held it up and tried to wait. That was a strange one. You have Chukwueze hitting the left post, which should have been a pretty well taken goal. In my mind, a pretty close offsides, if not a questionable one, where they say Chukwueze's off, plays it into Wilson, another incredible ball, and then put away by Raul Jimenez. I felt like this should have been 4-0 at least at the half, maybe even 5. Question for you though: is that the best half of football we've seen Fulham play this season?
Yeah, potentially. Certainly, the first half an hour, I thought we were brilliant, and I think you're absolutely right. It could have and possibly should have been more, because it felt like we were the ones sort of creating, all of the openings. I think we were quite intelligent with our play, in that first 30 minutes, where it felt like Spurs was sort of there to be hit on the counter, and if we played the right ball at the right time, we could get in behind them. And we know that they've got, particularly in Van de Ven, somebody who's got great recovery pace, and I think that he makes a brilliant challenge on Chukwueze as after he'd taken it round Vicario, which any other centre back, Chukwueze's probably rolling that in, and we would have been 3-0 up. So we sort of felt like we were well on top, and we were the ones making the chances. And that's when, in an away end, the frustration or nerves start to kick in, because you're thinking, surely we've got to take another chance, because we're not going to keep getting chance after chance, and we need to kind of kill this off while we're on top. But I think generally a brilliant first half. Maybe slightly towards the end of the half, I was a little bit concerned personally, in that I felt that we were just getting pushed a little bit deeper than I would like, and we weren't quite having the spells of possession that we had been earlier in the game. And then that kind of drifted into the second half, which is when we came under a bit more pressure. But in terms of the actual first half performance, yeah, really, really good, particularly the first 30 minutes.
Yeah, so coming on to that, I'm not going to lie. I was just ready for us to potentially collapse, whether it's an extra time in the first half or the first 5 minutes of the second half. It just feels like something we do this season, and I'm not very happy about it. Maybe it's a mentality where we're just trying to get into the dressing room. Maybe it's, hey, we're thinking job's done, and we get a little bit complacent. I hate those matches, especially for us, where we do all the right stuff at the beginning of the match. We have shots, we create opportunities, and yet we are a little bit, I don't want to say wasteful, because we did put 2 away and they were both great goals, but we were a little bit wasteful in that we had some opportunities to put a few more away. And so coming into the second half, I was very, very nervous for how we were going to come out. And candidly, as you said, we were getting pushed back a little bit. We looked a little flat and we get punished for it about 15 minutes in. What a strike by Kudus. I
Yeah.
mean, Kenny Tete is a great one-on-one defender. I don't know if anyone stops that there. Like that's a hell of a strike.
Yeah, I think the credit goes to Kudus as well. I mean, there's been question marks over whether, Leno maybe could have done better. Like, I've seen some sort of suggestions that maybe he goes for it with the wrong hand. He should be going with it with his left rather than his right. But I think you've got to give the credit to the strike. I think the more frustrating thing from my perspective was that we didn't clear our lines properly. I think Wilson
couldn't agree more.
Shanks a ball away, but that had been coming for about 15 minutes where we just couldn't keep the ball at that stage. I think it was coming back too quickly. It wasn't sticking when we were getting the ball higher up the pitch. Part of the, I think the issue around this is now that you've got this countdown rule where when the goalkeeper has it in his hands, he can't hold on to it forever like he used to. Teams are quite switched on and they sort of push higher up the pitch, so you can't just roll the ball out comfortably to the centre back now. So Leno was having to go longer with it quite often, and Raul just isn't going to dominate the likes of Van der Ven and Danso in the air. I think King was trying to get up to support, but I felt that in the second half, the game was getting a bit too physically overwhelming for someone like Josh King, who, as we know, hell of a talent, but he's 18 and he's still a boy. And he's, it's the kind of thing where a lot of the players that he's up against are physically stronger and more athletic than him. So it just felt like it wasn't sticking and we weren't just keeping hold of the ball. And inevitably they get the goal that felt like it had been coming. Maybe we weren't doing enough to sort of stop those crosses as well, particularly from the right-hand side with Porro. He was getting forward and Cess was doing a great job in those one-on-one battles against Kudus. But when he was kind of getting outnumbered, there's not really a lot you can do without the support. And I think that Chukwueze maybe was not as diligent in his defensive duties as he had been going the other way when he was a real outlet for us. But yeah, it was getting a bit concerning. But I think the substitutes that Silva made were the right ones at the right time, and that kind of just helped us get a little more of a foothold back into the game.
Yeah, I think it puts us in a really interesting situation because you see the subs, first of all, that Spurs are able to pull off and come in. I mean, players like Xavi Simons, who was one of the biggest signings of the offseason. Matthias Tell comes from Bayern Munich. Odegaard has been a live wire ever since he's come into their team from Burnley. Sarr, you mentioned before, doing a lot of work up there, and Rodrigo Bentancur, fantastic player. Like, those are all great names to come off the bench. And frankly, and pun intended here, I didn't see Thomas Frank doing too much in that game that I thought was really good man management or management tactically either. What I will say is he got the subs in early, and I got a little bit nervous when Marco did his normal Marco thing and held off a little bit on how long we had the subs come in, because you're 100% right. The impact that the subs made was absolutely a thing. And really interestingly, we have our 2 record signings coming off the bench. And the second you bring that in, they're not that far off the caliber. As much as I can say everything that I want about ESR, in terms of a coming on with tired legs, he's a very, very competent player on the ball, even tried to progress the play a little bit. Having Kevin as an outlet was a fantastic thing that was so needed. He has the most Kevin clearance that we've seen so far, where he, skins a guy and then back heels the clearance, which was very, very strange right into Cess. You can bring on a Lukic, which I think really, really actually helped us solidify things. I was calling for him to start, obviously, in the previous podcast, and I thought he came in and did a really good job. The only one that surprised me a little bit was Timothy Castagna, who we end up going into this kind of 3 at the back light that I almost thought, why didn't you bring in Cuenca for this? That feels like that would have been the right move for me.
So I think the reasoning for that was because they had both Odegaard and Tell come on. So I think he was a dog. He had gone off when Tell went on. Odegaard actually went to play left back. So essentially he was playing Castagna was kind of brought on particularly to just sort of counter that, I think, because Castagna didn't drop back into like a 5 when we were
Right.
defending. He was playing as like a right-sided midfielder. So I kind of understood it was almost like a man for man kind of, we're going to just give us a bit more defensive responsibility there. I think Iwobi by that point was looking a bit tired. I believe that was the sub that he made, was Castagna for Iwobi,
It
like
was.
very close to the end. Yeah. And Iwobi, to be fair to him, like he didn't necessarily have his best game when he was playing in the centre of the park, but then he moved to the left and then he moved to the right, and his flexibility was really useful. You touch on Lukic as well. Him and Smith Rowe coming on, we didn't need them to be creative. We needed them to keep the ball, and that's exactly what both of them did really well for us. As much as Smith Rowe in particular gets criticism for playing the easy pass or the simple pass when we need him to do something a bit more, the assignment last night was just play the simple pass and keep the ball and keep it moving, and it just helped us, relieve the pressure a little bit. And we weren't giving it away as cheaply as we had been when those two came on. I thought Lukic did a really good job of just progressing the ball up the pitch himself by carrying it and laying it off nice and comfortably rather than running into traffic. And it just kind of gave us a bit more comfort in there, and it allowed us to not be completely bombarded. As good a job as our back four were doing, I thought Anderson in particular was excellent. We just did need to relieve the pressure on those guys a little bit. So that's where I thought the subs really made an impact.
Look, at the end of the day, Marco played the exact tune that we needed. Every single move ended up being the right thing. Candidly, I was really happy, although at the time very nervous, to watch us hold down a lead for essentially 30 minutes, 40 minutes. It's something we haven't really done this season. We haven't ground out matches that way. At the end from a lead. Most of the time when we're leading, we end up conceding. And so it was really good to see not only the fact that we could do it, but Marco had one eye on how he was going to wrap up the game. And as you said, very tactically matched whatever Frank put out there. And I think he used the pieces really, really well that we had. And so was really happy to see that. I'm going to press you for a man of the match really quickly. I know no one was a passenger in this game. Everybody played a role. Even as you said, Iwobi, who didn't have his best game, was really, really connective in the middle. But if I pressed you for a man of the match, who is it?
So for me, I thought the outstanding performer was actually Anderson. I thought he was excellent in just dealing with the number of balls into the box and in and around there. It was a real kind of captain's performance from him, in that it's kind of gone under the radar a little bit that he's almost kind of by default just inherited the armband from the fact that Kenny doesn't start games anymore. Robinson's been out for half of the season. I don't think they like having Leno as the captain because you can't quite have the same conversations with the ref. So Anderson's kind of assumed that role, but really he's the ideal fit for it. And I thought that he gave a really solid performance. He was quite streetwise at times as well, like staying down when he'd get clattered just to kind of like buy us a little bit of time and allow us to kind of, get ourselves back into the proper shape.
And earn us a yellow card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because I think it was Van der Ven went and had a go at him for, and so just little things that maybe we're a bit guilty of being a bit too naive around at times. So while I didn't think he did anything necessarily like amazing or outstanding, I just thought that the consistency of his performance really set the tone for us from a defensive perspective. He made some really important blocks and sort of interceptions that don't necessarily make any kind of highlights package because they weren't glamorous or they weren't like, oh my God, it was about to go in. But yeah, I thought really solid performance. But you could pick from any, Tete's worth a shout for that as well. Bassi, I thought, had another good performance, which is nice to see him getting back to more what looks like his best. So I'm going to go for Anderson, but I think it could have been any of that back four, to be honest.
I think that is a totally worthwhile shout. I think Anderson really has kind of returned to form. Yes, the long balls aren't the way that we necessarily remember them in the season we got relegated, but at the same time, he has been a stalwart at the back. He has commanded the line. I think, as you said, a very captain-like performance. I just have a really hard time getting away from Chukwueze being the man of the match. I
Yeah,
mean,
fair.
every time he touched the ball, it looked like something was going to happen, and we look like a different team with him out there. I think I've read that the rumored purchase is 25 to 30 million. We need to put some money aside in the piggy bank. Like, just keep it there, make that signing. There are so many times where we've either gotten really close to messing up these loan with options. And I think of Harrison Reed coming up from the championship the first time. I think of Mitrovic when we came back up the first time as well. Sorry, Reed was the second time. I remember Manor Solomon. We didn't necessarily even execute it.
Yeah.
Matt Target, we didn't execute it. Just put the money away now. Just get the fee agreed to. That should not come out of Marco's coffers. We need him signed on a permanent. That to me, this game solidified it. I'm hoping this isn't a Manor Solomon type run where he goes and has a couple really, really nice matches, and then we never see him again for injury issues. But God, he is electric as a player and so much fun to watch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if it's if we have an obligation to buy him or it's just
I
an
believe
option.
it's an option.
Okay, I think if we have that sort of first choice, the option, I think we should execute it. I know it's early in terms of we've not seen as much of him as we would have liked to for one reason or another, but I think what we've seen has been impressive. In that regard, then, can I just ask you, Mike, if we're going to have to spend X amount to get Chukwueze, do you think it's worth then extending Harry Wilson's contract? Because the form that he's in at the moment suggests like he's a player playing for a contract. And we know that we're quite tight with things, well, PSR, which is going to change into SCR. So do you think it's worth it, or would you be looking elsewhere and maybe sort of take the financial hit of having to spend a few extra quid to maybe get an upgrade?
Yeah, so we were talking about it's really great to see other players taking a pop from outside of the box. If I really have to think of the players who do that, and one of the comments, honestly, from in the chat right now is from Graying Sideburns talking about getting Kevin, and I'm not sure if it's me or Samu Chukwueze on the field at the same time. I think he obviously is referring to me, but I guess he'd settle for Chukwueze as well. The one thing I don't love about seeing that, and it's a problem I have to a degree with King, it's a problem I have with ESR, is no one takes a pop from outside of the box. And I think Wilson, whether it's off the bench or whether it's when he starts, provides us something really different from the others. And I know we've talked about George from Chelsea quite a few times and bringing him in. I just think Harry Wilson just represents such a different type of player. I think we need to realign our expectations. He's not the guy who gets 10 goals and 15 assists who came up from the championship with us. A great sliding doors moment, I think, in my mind, is if he had never hurt his knee during preseason, what happens if he keeps that momentum up. But he's a player, as you said, playing for a contract right now. But you see what he does to the team. And I mean that in both the goals he scores and his cutthroat mentality on the field, but also when he does something great, the players run to him. You see Cesc run to him immediately. He is one of the boys. And candidly, and I'm talking a little bit outside, I'm doing this off the top of my head right now, I think he is one of the most tenured players on the team at this point.
Yeah.
And when we're going to be turning over the TCs, the Reeds of the world, we need that kind of next line of leadership. And when he is captaining Wales, when he is been at the club for so long, I think he's a really, really good steward to help shepherd us into this new next era of Fulham. Again, am I sure he starts every week? Absolutely not. But he offers us something fundamentally different, and we know what we're going to get from him, as opposed to necessarily bringing something new in. Now, granted, wages obviously have to be agreed to, and that's a big thing. We have other players we have to take care of. I believe Sessegnon is out of contract as well.
Yeah.
I know Adama and Raul and Tom Kearney are all out of contract. I expect at least two of those three to leave the club after the season. But I think Harry Wilson is a player that if he was in a lead side right now, for example, I do think that he is a player who is thriving as the main man, and we get to take some of that pressure off of him and really see him, go through some of his best and can carry him if he's not at his best.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think the particularly the point in terms of him being one of the longest serving players at the club still is quite important, because if you think that we are probably going to, it's probably likely to be Kearney's last season. I think Harrison Reed could even leave in January if we got a midfielder in. So, it is important to have those kind of mainstay fundamental players, as long as they're still good enough to kind of, almost kind of pass on like the values and the traditions of the club down to the next ones. We know that Cess is somebody, for example, who really loves the club as well. And I think we should already be in talks with him about, signing a long-term contract, because I think that while last year he had a bit of a difficult season but only really sort of came into it at the end, this season he's really kind of proven that he can stay consistently fit, and his performances have got better and better. So yeah, I would like to see both of those guys stay and sign new contracts, but maybe we'll have to wait until later in the season for that, because we know that Tony and Alistair don't like to do business early. Hey, why do business early when you can leave it as late as possible? So,
well, we just need Marco to call him up when we're about to be rumored, when he's about to be rumored to sign somewhere else, and then we'll just get him in. First, we need Marco to sign that contract, though.
If they get lured by the prestige of the 1995 FA Cup winners, we need to get Marco Silva to intervene. But yeah,
I will say two interesting things on Harry. First and foremost, I believe he was also Marco's first signing when he joined us. So,
yep.
Especially as we're seeing that original crop of signings kind of moving out of the club. And yes, Rodrigo's still here, but we don't have the Pereira. We don't have, oh my God, that keeper's name I'm blanking on right now, who joined us to compete with Rodak in the championship. And then you know who I'm talking about, Argentinian.
Gazaniga.
Gazaniga.
Yeah.
We don't have the Kevin Mbabus anymore. I mean, it's one of those things. The other thing, though, and I think Harry provides this for us, and we don't use it to the best of our ability, in my opinion, it'll actually lead me into one of the next questions. It's a question from our Discord, from Fulham Fan News. And if you haven't already, please sign up for our Discord. There are some really, really great questions that go in there, but it's also a great community where people can talk about the matches, people can talk about their thoughts, their transfer rumors, anything in there. Great place to find like-minded people, especially if you're in the US like me, and Fulham fan bases can be a little sparse in certain areas. It's always a great group to have. But Harry Wilson plays so many different roles for us. He plays on the right. We have seen him kind of do some work in the left wing. We watched him against we watched him against, oh my God, how am I blanking on this? Who did we play against before Spurs? I was hosting Sunderland. Yeah. We saw him dropping into the 8 against Sunderland, which was great. We've seen him play through the middle as a number 10. We've also seen him for Wales play as a false 9. And thus, Fulham Fan News' question: there is no way in his mind that Raul can make another 90 minutes. After last night, I'm not 100% sure of that. What options do we think Marco has, and what do we think he'll do, especially with City on Tuesday night? I would have loved for us to get one more goal to give Raul a little bit more of a rest. But Mike, if we have to rotate up top, is Harry Wilson the option we're going with? Is there somebody else you'd prefer to see?
Yeah, so I've thought this for a little while now. I think we've obviously got a horrendous record against Man City, so we need to do something different. I wouldn't be surprised to see us play some sort of formation that doesn't necessarily involve an out-and-out centre forward like Raul. It might be something a bit more hybrid, in that maybe we'll play, 2 wingers higher up the pitch and look to sort of pack the midfield, or play a 5 at the back. I think Silva likes to rotate when we have midweek games, because the intensity in the Premier League is so demanding on, particularly on some of the older players or the more injury-prone players, that he doesn't want to sort of overdo it with them. So I think Raul will be on the bench. The options could be something like, as you say, Wilson maybe in the false 9. Traore might get a run out, because as much as he's not necessarily the favourites, one of the favourite players amongst the Fulham fan base, when we played away to City last year, he caused them real problems. And if his finishing had been better, we could have won that game. So there's an opportunity there where, we're not going to have a lot of the ball against Man City. So maybe we need to be a real threat on the counter. And it might be the kind of thing where Traore starts and maybe Chukwueze. So we've got a bit of pace, some of the players that can run beyond, and we can look to kind of ping balls in behind for them to chase onto, because Donnarumma's not quite the sweeper keeper that Edison was, so he might be a bit more reluctant to come flying out of his goal. Or hey, we'd welcome that, because we just saw on Saturday that any goalkeeping error we might be in a better position to capitalize on. So I could see us just going something a little bit different, both from a personnel perspective and from a sort of a tactical setup, just to try something, because we know that City will dominate the ball. Some of their key players are starting to look back to their old selves. Phil Foden in particular is going to be a real handful. We know that Haaland is just an absolute beast, but they're not quite as mechanically infallible as they used to be. So there are opportunities to kind of get at them if you can pick your moments. So yeah, that would be my sort of hunch. Exactly what that looks like, I don't really know.
Coming into this match, I would have totally agreed with you that, hey, one eye on City. We probably need to rotate things a little bit more. We can't just keep doing the same thing we've been doing. After watching us against Sunderland and then watching us against Spurs, I don't bet against the team in form. I want to see us go after them. I want to see Raul up top. I want to see Iwobi in the center. I can't believe I'm saying I want to see Berger in there, but yeah, I think Berger keeps a spot as well. I think we have to go unchanged. If we make one change, for all the plaudits I just gave Harry Wilson, Pep Guardiola is on the record saying his least favorite player to play against is Adama Traore. And is there a path where we just say, hey, Adama, go do Adama things? Maybe it waits till later in the second half, and maybe that's the sub we make, and we start Chukwueze and Wilson, and we rotate them out, or rotate Chukwueze up top and bring in a Kevin and Adama on the wings. It feels like this team, though, is really starting to gel, and it's really interesting to think about. One of the questions in our Discord from Mike C was, does it make sense to try a Lukic Iwobi midfield at some point? Is the Lukic Berger pairing dead in all but the most kind of defensive matches, maybe even like a City match? And I think what you're starting to see is Marco is getting players bedded in. He's figuring out how he wants to use Iwobi, and he's kind of getting to play around with the pieces to see, which ones fit in which spots best at which times.
Yeah, I think as well that Silva's quite even though he does generally like his kind of preferred system, he has done it before where he's set a particular game plan for a particular opponent and hasn't been afraid to make personnel changes with that. I think as well, just because it's a midweek game, we've got another, tough fixture the following weekend. I think we've got Palace at home on the Sunday. This Man City game's almost a bit of a free hit to just try something different, because we've got some.
Oh God, we're not going back to the Scotty Parker era of free hits.
Oh no. I mean, fine margins and everything, but I think because of our recent run of form, it does allow us to try something a little bit more different, rather than, oh, we absolutely need to get a result here. As I said, I just think that, what we've tried before hasn't worked, because we've lost like 20 odd times to them in a row. So I'm not against us doing something a little bit different. And, even if that's a case of doing something to stay in the game, to then bring players on with half an hour, 20 minutes to go, who can try and get the result for us. We're going to lose Chukwueze, Iwobi and Batty to AFCON soon. So we're going to need some players to come in to replace those guys anyway. So maybe this is an opportunity for them to get a bit of game time under their belts already. For example, Cuenca might need a run out in order to kind of...
Justice for Cuenca.
Well, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what he does when Batty's away, because he will probably get a run of game time. But yeah, we'll see. I'm not against us trying something different in order to try and get a result, because it just, too often we've turned up against Man City and just been too accommodating to, them having the ball and just generally being better than us. So I'd like to see us do something a little bit different to see if we can force the issue a bit more.
So, Mike, as we look at the next couple of matches that we have as we go into this run of fixtures in December, I posited this question to Skibby during the great debate, and I'll ask you the same question, which is we look at the next couple matches in the league. We have Palace away, Burnley at home. Then we have our EFL Cup game at Newcastle. We have Nottingham Forest and West Ham. My question to you is, if you had to prioritize a match, are we prioritizing getting points on the board right now, or are we prioritizing how we actually do in that Newcastle match in the quarterfinal?
I personally want us to win a cup. So Newcastle away, we have to play our strongest team. I think the fixtures that we have now coming up in this run through December, although there's going to be a lot of games, they do look a little bit kinder on paper compared to maybe what they looked like a few weeks ago. These back-to-back wins, as much as we're still in 15th, I think it's more about points on the board at this stage in terms of our league position. And there's a gap starting to open up between those bottom three sides and the rest of the division. I think that while we need to make sure that we don't, take our foot off the gas in the league, and we need to keep trying to rack up points, that cup game has to be a priority for us, and I think it will be for Silva. I don't think he's going to go up there and play a weakened side for sure. But there's nothing to say that we can't get a result in that game as well as get a result in the league games. I think it's the Burnley game is before that, and that's on the Saturday. But then our next league fixture isn't until the following Monday. So there's actually a reasonable amount of rest time in between those two fixtures, but with the Newcastle game sandwiched in between. So I don't see any reason why we can't do both without, having to sacrifice one or the other.
I don't disagree with you. I will say I read this online, and I wish I remember who actually wrote it so I could give them the proper credit. So if you're a That's So Craven listener, please feel free to yell at me in the Discord here. But the Spurs game reminds me so much of our win at Old Trafford against United. I think it was 2 seasons ago, where we win this glorious match. We get this monkey off of our backs. And then you look at the table and it's like, wait, we're still in 15th. And it's weird because I feel so good right now as a Fulham supporter, as opposed to where we were at the international break, where we were even just a couple of weeks ago debating, does Marco Silva keep his job? Are the Cons going to pull the trigger? Are we going to have someone like Rafinha or Brendan Rodgers come in? And at least for me, I'm not sure about you, Mike, I have always been a Silva in guy. I want him to sign another contract. He was talking about this was his 200th match.
Yeah.
They asked him, if he thought he was going to have another 200, and he says, I'm not sure, but, it would be a wonderful project. We're clearly not getting sick of each other. So I think there's some really, really positive things. And I just want to point out, and it creates an interesting question here. We are currently on 17 points. We are 6 points from the drop, which is Leeds right now on goal difference. I actually don't even know. I guess it must be goals for West Ham, keeping them above Leeds right now. But if you look up the table, the European spots, Brighton in 5th, 22 points, Man United in 7th, 21 points. And there's this real cluster where I almost feel like it really is going to be dependent on this run of matches that come from pretty much City or Burnley. Are we part of that kind of top part of the pack? Are we going to be the European chasers? Or are we going to be hey, we may be right on the edge of getting sucked into the relegation battle, maybe not. I don't know how you feel about that, but I almost feel like these 3 games going into the EFL Cup quarterfinal, even if you want to call City a free hit, are really where our season can get pushed through the floor. And Marco can even make a stronger case that we need to strengthen the squad in the January window if we come out with some solid results, if we come out with 5-6 points there.
Yeah, I think, and even beyond that, you've got, I think it's Forest, West Ham, and then Palace again after
Yep.
that. So that's a run of fixtures that you'd like to think that we can pick up some points in, and we're not going to win every one of those games, but I don't think we're going to lose every one of those games either. So you'd like to think that we can make some ground on the looking up the way rather than looking over our shoulder. I think the league at the moment, though, kind of shows that if you're not on it, you can get beaten and beaten badly. Everton yesterday getting turned over by Newcastle isn't a surprise because we saw that Everton did a bit of a job on us a couple of weeks ago, and then again against Man United, but their level dropped slightly and they get absolutely pummeled by Newcastle, who were supposedly in a bad run of form, but aren't a bad side at all. So this Premier League's got some really good sides, but a lot of them can all beat one another. So
What
if
about
we can,
Forest the week before?
yeah, exactly. I mean, Forest turning up at Liverpool and getting a result there. It's it kind of shows that even like sides that are in theory struggling are still capable sides, and they've got good players in them. So I feel like it's the kind of thing where we need to make sure that we're competitive in all of those games. And as long as we don't put in a performance like we did against Everton, we've got every chance of getting points out of all of those games that we talked about. I just think that so the Newcastle game, when that tie came out, that was the worst possible one I thought we could have got because
Really?
yeah. And so my theory for that is Newcastle are a side who they don't get many opportunities to win trophies. They're going to take it deadly seriously and going to play their best side. If we'd have got Man City away, Arsenal away, Chelsea away, they would have all rotated. You looked at Man City, for goodness sake, rotated their team entirely against Bayer Leverkusen in the Champions League. Hopefully they do that against us on Tuesday, but I don't see it. I feel like they're more likely to do that against Brentford in the League Cup. Same with Arsenal and Chelsea, who they've got the kind of squads that they feel they can do that. I just think that Newcastle away, particularly because it's not exactly the kind of place that you want to go when they are really bang up for it. And a cup quarter final is the kind of thing that somebody like Newcastle don't take for granted in the same way that other bigger clubs do. If we'd have been at home, I'd fancy our chances more. But I feel like with it being away to a club and a team that are going to be really up for it, we're going to need to be at our best to get through. Not to say that we can't, but out of all of the teams that were left in the hat and the way that it came out as well with us being away, I just think that that's a really difficult one. So I think we need to go and prioritize that in terms of getting through, but also make sure that we're picking up points in the league. Sorry, that's a bit of a diplomatic answer, as in we should be able to approach all games in the exact same manner. But
So I do want to say, you say that Newcastle you thought was one of the worst options we could get. I'll be candid with you. I was actually pretty happy with the draw.
okay,
And in my mind, I don't want to play Arsenal. Arsenal at this point, first of all, their biggest strength is our biggest weakness in set pieces. And they are determined to prove a point this year in one way or another, whether it's winning trophies, whether it's, going far in the Champions League, whether it's, winning the Premier League this year. Maybe they rotate, maybe they don't. City, we're cursed right now, and hopefully we break it on Tuesday. I think there's just a mental thing right now with them. They're the one big scalp we haven't pulled since Marco joined us, and I just
okay,
that's not where I want to necessarily be dealing with them. And then when I looked at the other options, I don't, I candidly don't want a derby because the other club, whether it was Brentford or Chelsea, was going to get up for the derby. And I don't want to be greedy and say, hey, I can't remember who the championship club is right now who's in there, but I'm not going to get greedy. I also know that, we're never going to be the ones to get the easy route all the way in.
no, of course not. I think it was
And
Chelsea got
so,
Cardiff, didn't they? And you just thought,
right,
of
it was
course they did.
Cardiff.
Of course,
Exactly.
Chelsea got Cardiff.
Exactly. So if those are the options, and I think about the Newcastle match, and candidly, we played them really close at St. James's Park.
Mm.
Bassey may have had the worst game of his career there.
Yeah.
And we were missing how many players? 5, 6, 7 at that point? Like that was the kind of the beginning of the panic swing for us. Theoretically, if we're going to be healthy, if we haven't lost everyone to AFCON at that point, I feel pretty good about the weapons that we have to to make a really good account of ourselves, win or lose.
I think the Nigeria boys will have already gone by then. I think
Will
they
they
might.
really?
Yeah, I think they might even miss the Burnley game because
No.
the tournament starts around that time, but they get released I think a week before because they maybe play warm-up games. So I think it's the kind of thing
So
where
AFCON begins the 21st.
yeah, so I think they have to get released a week prior to that. So with the Newcastle game
Oh,
being the 17th, I think it might even be the Burnley one, or that might be their last game. But yeah,
I think that the boys tell the Nigerian folks, hey, give us a couple more minutes. Like we're trying to do something special here. We really want to do this for the shirt. I think Iwobi would absolutely be all in and say that. But I would love to see us play the strongest team possible against Newcastle. I think you and I are in agreement with
agree.
that.
Yeah,
I just if there's a possibility that Anthony Robinson is either back or coming back, it gives us another option with moving Cess up the field a little bit
yeah.
more. I'd be really, really excited to see that match. And again, I don't think Newcastle, did anything spectacular against us the last time. It was us giving them the match, and I want to get one back.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I don't think it's an unwinnable tie. I just think it's a really difficult one. But look, I think what Silva's shown is that he's gotten us over, you know, some hurdles that we didn't think that we could get over before. So why not this one? You know, it'd be nice to have another crack at a League Cup semi-final again. It's typically we seem to do well in this competition just around the time of the Africa Cup of Nations and then lose some real key players. But them's the breaks. So I think we're sort of in a better state because of the last two, not just results but performances in different ways. I thought the Sunderland game was a really good performance because we dominated and 1-0 kind of flattered Sunderland. The one yesterday was a bit more about resilience and game management, and I just thought that we did that really well. Apart from that sort of spell just after half time where we were really under the cosh, I'm a bit more confident about us kind of going forward, and I think that we're a good side. We've got good players. We'll get points in the league that will push us up the table. Some of the teams that are above us have had nicer runs of fixtures. We've still got to play some of those games. If you look at what the away fixtures that we've had, I think they've been all against sides that finished in the top half last year, apart from Everton, and that was our worst performance. But you'd like to think that those ones coming up, in the next month or so, give us an opportunity to get some more points on the board away from home and hopefully kick on up the table.
So if I ask you, Mike, because I don't think we're going to get together before the Man City game on Tuesday, if I had to ask you for your preferred lineup for the match, what does it look like for you?
Preferred lineup, So I think, and wouldn't be against us seeing going to maybe like a five at the back. So Leno in goal, obviously. I think Sessegnon keeps his place at wing back. I'd still keep Bassi in as the left-sided centre back. Anderson would be obviously in because I think he's been playing really well and seems to be the captain. The other centre back, I'm not so sure about. I think we know that Tete has sort of injury problems if he plays too much, so I think he might come out of the side, and Castagna would come in at right wing back. So it's whether Diop or Cuenca comes in for me. I think that maybe Cuenca might be a bit more suited to playing against a team like Man City, who have got a lot of sort of quick, diminutive players who are clever in and around the box, and we can see that from previous games, someone like Diop can come unstuck against those kind of players a little bit. But I'm not sure how to phrase this, but it's almost a bit like if you're a left-footed centre-back, apparently you can only play on the left side as a centre-back. So Cuenca might be the one that misses out there, but I wouldn't mind seeing him in against somebody like Man City. In front of that, I'd maybe play like a three of Iwobi, Berger and Lukic in terms of trying to keep the ball, and then something a bit batshit up front. We'll go with Chukwueze and Adama as sort of two kind of wide forwards that can get in behind, with the idea that stay in the game, have a threat on the counter attack, and then later in the game, when we look to maybe kick on and it becomes a bit more stretched, we could bring the likes of Wilson, maybe Smith Rowe, and even Rowell off the bench. I'd take King out just because I feel like we don't want to run him into the ground, and there's going to be a lot of games coming up. He's going to play a lot of football over the next few months, and maybe just kind of keeping him back would be wise. So that's what I'm going for. It's a bit left field, but it might never materialize, so you'll never get to judge me on it, or it might be exactly what Silver picks, and it's a car crash, and then you can say this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and I'll say yeah, that's fine. But there we go. What about you, Mike?
No, I love how well thought out and logical your process was. I'm going to be incredibly boring. I alluded to this before. We have played so well the last two matches. I don't really want to see any change. If you really, really press me on one, and I'll give you my left field shout, move Harry into the 10. If you want to give King a rest, move Harry into the 10. One of the comments from Graying Sideburns earlier was get Chukwueze and Kevin on at the same time. That's how we do it. We get Chukwueze on the right, we get Kevin on the left, or hell, we can flip it too. Although it looks like Kevin has some sort of allergy to playing on the right, I guess, which I guess is fine. That's the only change I might consider making. I don't want to see the Shield against City, which is what I'm now calling the Berger Lukic pairing. I don't need to see the Great Shield of Fulham. I don't need to see ESR starting. I think he's done a very good job off the bench in his cameos there. I want us to take it to him. Again, at the end of the day, has City been playing well? Absolutely. Like they are a real threat. They are a real team. I would tell you there might be some smart money on City actually winning the league, especially since they're only 5 points behind Arsenal. And we know how Arsenal wrap up seasons. And I know that we're coming into the busy Christmas period. I just think if there's any chance that we have to beat City, the opportunity is going to be playing the team in form, playing the team that has this belief, that has been taking down top half sides. Let them keep riding it. Keep Chukwueze, and that's fine with me. But I think that's probably what I want to see personally for City.
Fair enough. I can't fault that logic. To be fair, it's winning breeds winning and all that. So no, we'll see on Tuesday what materializes. But either way, whatever a Silver goes for, let's hope we can just break this curse because it's starting to piss me off.
My Thanksgiving wish, though, from the U.S., and by the way, happy Thanksgiving to any of our U.S. listeners, or belated Thanksgiving in this case. I know Fulham obviously gave us exactly what we were thankful for on Saturday. But the one thing I would love to see is I would love to see Jedi on the bench. We've had very, very little insight into where he is right now and where he is in his rehabilitation. It would be a great sign of things to come if he was on the bench, because we've read that he's training individually. He can give us a spark off the bench if really, really needed. But even just having him on the bench will tell us, hey, he's almost back. So as we lose, the AFCON boys, we're getting back the American Jedi to come back into the lineup and help us kind of with that rotation piece.
Yeah, I'm all for that as well. As long as it's not rushed, I think we need to make sure that he's ready and he's right. Because once he's back fully fit, he'll be a real key player for us, particularly as we try and push on up the league and hopefully towards a cup final or two.
Yeah. I mean, Mike, any other last comments about whether it's the Spurs match, whether it's coming up on City on Tuesday, whether it's some of the rumors that are coming out? I have one story I want to tell at the end, but I want to give you the mic one last time to get your thoughts.
No, you know what? I think we've covered everything. I'm looking forward to the run of games now. We've got no more international breaks to worry about until March, so it's nice to just get back to back Fulham games. We've got a few midweeks coming up as well, so I think we'll be bombarded with Fulham content to talk about over the next few weeks. But no, the floor is yours, Mike. Take us home.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a really, really fun run of matches. I think the mood at the club is totally flipped, but a fun little personal story for me. As I mentioned before, I was watching at Susie Q's with Fulham DC last week. Thank you all for having me again anytime I'm in town. And I was going up at halftime. I was talking some poor guy's ear off in the first half, talking about everything that we needed to do. Go up to the bar, finally get a drink, and some guy walks up to me and goes, "Are you Mike from the Craven podcast?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I was listening to you the episodes and cramming them in for from the last week before the match. I was literally listening on the ride over, and I heard you talking from the other side of the bar." And I said, "Wow, that's awesome." And I recognized him immediately. It is the man I've referenced so many times in this podcast, Graying Sideburns. I actually met him 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we were when Chelsea played Fulham in DC. And I ran up to him, embarrassed him in front of his entire family, asking for a photo. And this time we made sure we got another one. Feel free to check it out. He and I both have had our weights fluctuate a little bit. His a little lower, mine probably a little higher right now. But it was a really, really cool experience. And it's great to see that there are US listeners supporting the pod. We want to continue to grow the group that we have. It's a really, really great thing. But yeah, I guess it's always great to see the people that you see on Twitter in real life. And get to hang out, support Fulham with them, and introduce them to the wonders of baby Guinness. So, yeah,
Can't go wrong with the baby Guinness.
not after a win. It's twice as sweet. So, Mike, I love the kit. Thank you for joining me today. I know that I am probably the last person you wanted to see at this point, but you know what? It's been a lot of fun. It's been great to recap this game. Why don't you bring us home?
You